Why would anyone stand there and take it? The sound of a slap echoed across the weapon's qualification range like a gunshot. 83 pairs of eyes turned toward the small woman who had just hit the concrete floor. Her cheek burned red. Her technician's cap tumbled away, rolling to a stop against an ammunition crate. Staff Sergeant Derek Kane stood over her, his hand still raised, palm open. 6 feet 2 inches of muscle and ego wrapped in a ranger instructor's uniform. The morning sun caught the combat patch on his shoulder, the one he wore like a medal, despite never having earned it in actual combat. I asked you one last time, his voice carried across the training yard, designed to humiliate. Give me the weapon. Willow Bennett, maintenance technician, oil-stained uniform, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She slowly pushed herself up from the ground. She said nothing, just quietly picked up her cap, dusted it off, and placed it back on her head. Can't talk, Derek laughed, turning to the crowd of rangers watching the scene unfold. See this? This is why women don't belong here. Can't even clean a rifle properly. Laughter rippled through the training yard, but Willow remained silent. Something in her eyes made Master Sergeant Isaac Grant, standing in the far corner, pause mid-step. He narrowed his gaze, studying the way she stood. Shoulders open, center of gravity low, hands relaxed at her sides but ready. That stance. He'd seen it before in places where even rangers weren't cleared to set foot. Colonel Solomon Hayes emerged from the command building, conducting his routine inspection. He stopped when he saw the scene before him. What's going on here? Derek spun around, his face still flushed with anger. Sir, this technician is refusing to release weapons to my unit. She's delaying our entire training schedule. Hayes looked at Willow, then at the M4 carbine in her hands. For just a moment, something flickered in his eyes, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. Handle it, Staff Sergeant. Derek grinned. Yes, sir. He stepped toward Willow, fists clenched. But in the next 20 minutes, everything he believed about himself would crumble to dust. The training yard at Joint Tactical Training Complex buzzed with the controlled chaos of an inter-service combat readiness evaluation. Over 80 personnel from Army Rangers, Marine Force Recon, and various support units had gathered for what was supposed to be a routine qualification day. The North Carolina humidity hung thick in the air, mixing with gun oil and testosterone. Willow returned to her workstation without a word, her movements measured and deliberate as she continued inspecting the rack of M4 carbines awaiting distribution. Her fingers moved across each weapon with a precision that seemed almost mechanical, checking chambers, testing trigger assemblies, examining firing pins under the harsh fluorescent lights of the armory alcove. Derek Kane watched her retreat with barely concealed contempt. He turned to his group of rangers, voice pitched to carry. 20 minutes behind schedule because some grease monkey thinks she knows weapons better than soldiers who actually use them. Sergeant First Class Ambershaw materialized at his elbow, clipboard pressed against her chest like armor. The admin NCO had a face that seemed permanently set in disapproval, and her eyes tracked Willow with the kind of disdain usually reserved for something stuck to the bottom of a boot. I've been trying to get her transferred for weeks. She doesn't follow protocol, questions everything, acts like she's better than everyone else. Protocol, Derek snorted. She needs to learn her place. From the armorer station, Specialist Caleb Turner joined the conversation, his voice carrying a whine of wounded pride. She flagged 3 of my weapons this morning, said the firing pins showed irregular wear patterns. I've been doing this job for 4 years. 4 years. And some cleaning lady thinks she can tell me my business. Private First Class Logan Pierce, barely 22 and desperate to prove himself, laughed too loudly at everything his superiors said. Maybe she's got a thing for guns since she can't get a man to look at her. The comment drew scattered chuckles from the younger trainees. The kind of nervous laughter that comes from wanting to belong more than wanting to be decent. Willow didn't react. She simply held up the M4 that had started the confrontation, her small hands steady as she worked the charging handle. The weapon's bolt carrier group slid free with a whisper of metal on metal, and she held the firing pin up to the light. This pin has asymmetric wear on the tip. Her voice was quiet, almost clinical. Approximately 0.3 millimeters of deviation. Under sustained fire, it will fracture within 100 rounds, possibly fewer. Caleb's face reddened. That's within acceptable tolerances. Acceptable for a training weapon that won't see combat. Willow set the pin down with careful precision. Your Rangers are deploying to Syria in 6 weeks. Sergeant Kane mentioned it himself this morning. This weapon will fail them when they need it most. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. Derek stepped forward, his boots heavy on the concrete. How do you know about our deployment? Willow's expression didn't change. You announced it to 30 trainees at 07:15 this morning. Sound carries. Sound carries, he mimicked, voice dripping with mockery. He turned to his audience again. Listen to this. The cleaning lady has opinions about combat deployments now. Captain Hugo Mercer appeared from the administrative building, drawn by the commotion. The training officer had the look of a man who valued smooth operations above all else. His uniform pressed to knife-edge creases, his expression professionally neutral. What's the holdup? Derek straightened. Sir, this technician is refusing to release properly inspected weapons. She's overstepping her authority. Mercer's gaze swept over Willow, dismissing her in a single glance. You're here to maintain and distribute equipment as directed. Do your job and let the professionals handle the rest. Yes, sir. Willow's response was automatic, her face betraying nothing. But Sergeant Fern Delgado, who had been watching from the supply depot doorway, caught something in the set of Willow's shoulders. A tension that didn't match her submissive words. Fern had been in the army long enough to recognize the difference between someone who was beaten and someone who was choosing not to fight. She approached Willow as the confrontation temporarily dispersed, the crowd moving toward the shooting lanes for the morning's first qualification round. Hey, you okay? Willow looked up. For just a moment, something human flickered behind her guarded expression. I'm fine, Sergeant. Fern, we've been over this. She leaned against the workbench, keeping her voice low. You should report him. That was assault. He's got connections, friends in high places. Willow resumed her inspection of the weapon rack, her movements never faltering. I've seen his type before. They always have protection. Fern studied her colleague's profile, noting the faint scar that traced along her jawline, the calluses on her hands that seemed too thick for someone who just cleaned weapons, the way her eyes constantly scanned the environment even while her hands worked. Where'd you serve? The question hung in the air for a beat too long. I'm just a technician, Willow said finally. Started 3 years ago, nothing special. But Fern had been a supply NCO for 12 years. She knew how to read people, how to spot the things they tried to hide. And everything about Willow Bennett screamed that nothing special was the biggest lie she'd ever heard. There was something this woman wasn't telling them, something buried deep beneath that oil-stained uniform and quiet demeanor. And whatever it was, Fern had the feeling they were all about to find out. What happens when a bully picks the wrong target? The first shot rang out at 0900 hours. Derek Kane, standing at lane 7, squeezed the trigger of his M4 with the confident swagger of a man who believed he was the best shooter on the range. The round punched through the paper target downrange. Center mass, decent grouping, exactly what you'd expect from a ranger instructor. He turned to his audience, flashing a grin. That's how it's done, gentlemen. More shots followed, rangers taking their turns, some good, some mediocre, the kind of performance that would pass qualification but wouldn't win any competitions. Master Sergeant Grant watched from the tower, stopwatch in hand, his weathered face revealing nothing. But his eyes kept drifting back to the armory alcove where Willow Bennett continued her work, seemingly oblivious to the spectacle around her. "Technician Bennett," Captain Mercer's voice cut through the gunfire. "Since you have such strong opinions about our weapons, perhaps you'd like to demonstrate your expertise." The range went quiet. 80 pairs of eyes turned toward Willow. She looked up from the weapon she was cleaning, her expression unreadable. "Sorry." "You heard me." Mercer crossed his arms. "Show us what a maintenance technician knows about actually using these rifles you're so quick to criticize." Derek's grin widened. This was going to be entertaining. Willow set down her cleaning rod, slowly, deliberately. She walked to the firing line, her boots barely making a sound on the concrete. Someone handed her an M4, the same one Derek had just used. She took it without comment, checking the chamber, testing the weight, her movements economical and precise. "Whenever you're ready, technician," Mercer said, his tone making it clear he expected her to fail. Willow settled into her stance, but it wasn't the stance of a technician. It was something else entirely, something that made Master Sergeant Grant straighten in his tower, his hand unconsciously reaching for the radio at his belt. She raised the weapon, exhaled, and fired. The first round punched through the target's forehead, dead center. The second followed before the echo of the first had faded. Same hole, impossible precision. The third, the fourth, the fifth, each round finding its mark with mechanical perfection. No hesitation, no correction, just pure, controlled lethality. The magazine emptied in less than 8 seconds. When the smoke cleared, the target downrange had a single ragged hole where the head should have been. Every round, same spot, at 200 yards. The silence on the range was deafening. Willow lowered the weapon, her breathing steady, her expression unchanged. She walked back to the armory alcove and resumed cleaning rifles as if nothing had happened. Derek Kane stood frozen, his swagger evaporating like morning dew. That grouping, that speed, that control, he'd never seen anything like it, not from Rangers, not from Special Forces, not from anyone. "Who the hell is she?" someone whispered. Captain Mercer's professional neutrality had cracked. He stared at Willow with a mixture of confusion and something that looked almost like fear. "Bennett, my office, now." Willow set down her cleaning supplies and followed him without a word. The crowd parted as she passed, soldiers who had been mocking her minutes ago now watching with wary respect. In the administrative building, Mercer closed the door behind them. His hands were shaking slightly as he pulled out a file folder. "I need you to be honest with me right now. What's your actual job here?" "Maintenance technician, sir." "Don't," he slammed the folder on the desk. "Don't insult my intelligence. Nobody shoots like that without serious training, advanced training, the kind that doesn't appear on standard service records." Willow remained silent. Mercer opened the folder. Willow Bennett's official file, 3 years of unremarkable service, basic training at Fort Jackson, technical school at Fort Lee, assignment to Joint Tactical Training Complex as a maintenance specialist, no deployments, no special schools, no combat experience, a perfectly ordinary career. Too ordinary. "Your file is clean," Mercer said slowly. "Too clean. It reads like something that was built from scratch." Still, Willow said nothing. "I'm going to ask you one more time." Mercer leaned forward. "Who are you really?" Before Willow could answer, the door burst open. Master Sergeant Grant stood in the doorway, his face pale. Behind him, Colonel Hayes emerged, and he was not alone. A woman in civilian clothes followed, late 40s, gray streaks in her dark hair, eyes that had seen things that would break lesser people. She wore no uniform, no rank, but everyone in that room instinctively knew she outranked them all. "Colonel," Mercer stammered, "I was just—" "Step outside, Captain." Hayes' voice left no room for argument. Mercer left. Grant followed. The door closed, leaving Willow alone with Hayes and the mysterious woman. The woman studied Willow for a long moment. Then she smiled. It was not a warm smile. "Hello, Phoenix." That name, that code name. Willow felt something cold settle in her chest, a weight she'd thought she'd left behind, a life she'd tried to bury. "I go by Willow now." "Of course you do." The woman pulled out a chair and sat. "But Phoenix is who you really are, and Phoenix is who I need." Hayes remained standing, his expression grim. "Senior Chief, this is." "I know who she is." Willow's voice was barely above a whisper. The woman's smile widened. "Good, then you know why I'm here." Outside, through the window, Derek Kane was demanding answers. Soldiers were gathering, rumors spreading like wildfire. Who was the cleaning lady? Where had she learned to shoot like that? What was happening in that office? But inside, a different conversation was taking place. One that would change everything. One that would reveal secrets 3 years in the making. One that would explain why a woman with the skills of an elite operative had spent 3 years cleaning rifles and changing oil. The woman leaned forward. "We have a situation, and you're the only one who can fix it." Willow closed her eyes. She'd known this day would come. Deep down, she'd always known. You don't walk away from the life she'd led. Not really, not forever. "What do you need?" she asked. And with those 4 words, Phoenix began to rise from the ashes. "How do you carry a secret that could destroy you?" 3 years earlier, somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean. Senior Chief Petty Officer Willow Bennett sat in the cargo hold of a C-130, her hands wrapped around a cup of cold coffee, her eyes fixed on nothing. The other operators had fallen asleep hours ago. Ghost, Wraith, Sparrow, her team, her family, but sleep wouldn't come for her. Not after what they'd just done. Not after what they'd just lost. The mission had been textbook. Infiltrate a terrorist cell. Extract the target. Exfiltrate before dawn. They'd done it 100 times before across a dozen countries whose names appeared on no official reports. But this time, something had gone wrong. Intelligence had been compromised. The safe house had been hit. And by the time Phoenix's team arrived, half the assets were dead. She'd killed 12 men that night. 12, quick, efficient, the way she'd been trained, but their faces wouldn't leave her mind. Young faces, some of them, boys really, following orders they didn't understand, dying for causes they'd been fed since childhood. "You okay, boss?" Sparrow had asked, his voice cutting through her thoughts. "I'm fine." But she wasn't fine. She was breaking, piece by piece. Mission by mission, the weight of all those bodies, all those decisions, all that blood, it was crushing her. When they landed at the black site, her commanding officer was waiting. A woman who went by the call sign Shepherd. The same woman who now sat across from her in Captain Mercer's office. The same woman who had built Phoenix from the ground up, trained her, shaped her, turned her into a weapon. "We need to talk," Shepherd had said. They'd walked to a secure room. No windows, no recording devices, just 2 women who'd seen too much discussing things that could never be acknowledged. "You're done," Shepherd had said simply. Willow blinked. "Ma'am." "You're done, burned out. I can see it in your eyes. You've been running operations for 8 years without a break. You're one of the best I've ever trained, but you're at your limit." "I can still." "I'm not asking." Shepherd's voice was gentle but firm. "I'm pulling you out for your own good." Willow felt something break inside her. Relief, terror, shame. "What happens to me?" "That's up to you." Shepherd pulled out a folder. "I can offer you a desk job, analysis, training, something safe, something that won't require you to kill anymore." She paused. "Or I can give you something else, something quieter." "What do you mean?" Shepherd opened the folder. Inside was a new identity, new service record, new life. You disappear completely. New name, new rank, new job, you become nobody. Just another technician at a training facility. No deployments, no missions, no ghosts. "Why would I want that?" "Because," Shepherd said softly, "sometimes the best operators need to remember what they're fighting for. Sometimes they need to step back and see the world they're protecting instead of just the threats they're eliminating. She closed the folder. And sometimes they just need to heal. Willow stared at the folder. A way out, a chance to be normal, to sleep without seeing faces, to exist without carrying the weight of classified kill counts and black operations. How long? As long as you need. Could be 6 months, could be 6 years. When you're ready to come back, if you're ready, you call me. And if I'm never ready? Shepard smiled. Then you've earned your peace. Willow had taken the folder, taken the new life, become Willow Bennett, maintenance technician, unremarkable, invisible, safe. For 3 years she'd kept her head down, changed oil, cleaned rifles, avoided attention. She'd watched Rangers train and remembered when she was one of them, better than them, faster, deadlier, but that was Phoenix, and Phoenix was dead. Or so she'd thought. Now, sitting across from Shepard again, Willow felt the old weight settling back on her shoulders, the burden she'd tried to shed, the identity she'd tried to bury. "You said you had a situation," Willow said quietly. Shepard nodded. 3 weeks ago, one of our operators was captured in Syria, codename Sparrow, Jake Morrison. The name hit Willow like a physical blow. Jake, her old teammate, the kid she'd trained, the operator who'd saved her life in Yemen, captured. How? Ambush, clean, professional. They knew exactly where he'd be and when he'd be there, which means we have a leak. Shepard's eyes were hard. We've tried everything, diplomatic channels, back-channel negotiations, even explored a ransom. They're not interested in any of it. They want him dead, publicly, as a message. So extract him. We've tried twice. Both times the teams walked into ambushes. They know we're coming before we even get close. The leak is somewhere high up, someone with access to operational details. Willow felt her stomach tighten. What do you need from me? I need someone who doesn't exist, someone they won't see coming, someone who can operate completely off the books with zero official support. Shepard leaned forward. I need Phoenix. The room was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Colonel Hayes stood by the window, his expression unreadable. Outside, Derek Kane was still demanding answers, still playing the bully, still completely unaware that the woman he'd slapped that morning could kill him in a dozen different ways before he even knew what was happening. If I do this, Willow said slowly, my cover is blown. Everyone out there will know. The life I've built here is over. I know. And if I don't? Shepard's expression didn't change. Then Jake dies slowly on camera, and his blood is on all our hands. Willow closed her eyes. She'd known peace for 3 years, real peace. The kind that comes from not carrying classified kill counts. The kind that comes from fixing things instead of breaking them. But Jake was out there, suffering, waiting, hoping someone would come. And deep down, beneath all the oil stains and the quiet demeanor and the carefully constructed facade of normalcy, Phoenix had never really died. She'd just been sleeping, waiting for the moment when she'd be needed again. That moment had arrived. When do I leave? Willow asked. Shepard smiled, the kind of smile that said she'd known what the answer would be all along. Tonight, we'll brief you on the flight. Ghost and Wraith are already in position. They're waiting for their team leader. Willow stood. I need to settle some things first. You have 2 hours. She turned toward the door, toward the life she was about to leave behind, toward the secret she was about to reveal, toward the confrontation with Derek Kane that would either vindicate her or destroy her. But before she could leave, Hayes spoke. Senior Chief, she turned. Why'd you let him hit you? Why didn't you fight back? Willow was quiet for a long moment. Because fighting back would have revealed who I was, and I wasn't ready to be that person again. Not until I had to be. And now? She looked out the window at the crowd gathering on the range, at Derek Kane still talking, still bragging, still completely unaware of what was coming. Now, she said softly, the easy days are over. Can you ever really leave war behind? The briefing room was empty except for three people: Willow Bennett, Colonel Solomon Hayes, and Shepard, the woman with no name and no rank who somehow outranked everyone. A laptop sat open on the table, displaying satellite imagery of a compound in northern Syria. Desert terrain, isolated location, heavily guarded, the kind of place where people disappeared and were never found again. "This is where they're holding him," Shepard said, pointing to a cluster of buildings. "Third structure from the north, second floor. He's being kept in a single room chained to the wall. Guards rotate every 6 hours. Approximately 40 hostiles in the compound at any given time." Willow studied the image, her mind already calculating approach vectors, weak points, extraction routes. The old training coming back like muscle memory. Defenses. Basic guard towers, spotlights, perimeter patrol. They're not expecting a rescue attempt, not anymore. After the last 2 failed operations, they think we've given up. Good. Willow zoomed in on the north wall. "That's our entry point. Low visibility, minimal coverage from the towers. We go in at 0300 when fatigue sets in." Hayes watched her work, seeing the transformation. The technician was gone. In her place stood someone else entirely. Someone who spoke in terms of hostile counts and kill zones. Someone who could look at a fortified compound and see nothing but tactical opportunities. "Your team is already in country," Shepard continued. "Ghost and Wraith. They've been conducting surveillance for the past week. They know the guard rotation, the supply runs, the communication patterns. All they need is a team leader to pull it together." Extraction plan. Helicopter, 10 miles north. It'll be waiting at the designated coordinates from 0400 to 0500. Miss that window and you're on your own. Willow nodded. Standard Black Ops protocol. Get in, get out, leave no trace. If something went wrong, the government would deny everything. No backup, no rescue, no acknowledgement. She'd operated under those conditions for 8 years. One more time wouldn't kill her. "Probably." "What about the leak?" she asked. Shepard's expression darkened. "Still unidentified. Which is why this operation is being run completely off-book. No official paperwork, no mission logs, no oversight. As far as the Pentagon is concerned, you don't exist, and this conversation never happened." Plausible deniability. Survival. If the leak finds out about this operation, you'll walk into the same ambush that killed the last 2 teams. Willow closed the laptop. "When do I leave?" "Wheels up in 90 minutes. But first," Shepard pulled out a black duffel bag and set it on the table. "You're going to need these." Willow unzipped the bag. Inside was everything Phoenix needed: tactical gear, night vision, weapons, and at the bottom, beneath all the equipment, a small patch. Black background, red Phoenix. No words, no unit designation, just the symbol of who she really was. She picked up the patch, feeling its weight. Such a small thing, barely an ounce, but it represented 8 years of her life. 8 years of operations across 3 continents. 8 years of becoming something more than human, something that didn't sleep, didn't hesitate, didn't fail. "Colonel Hayes," Shepard said, turning to him. "A word outside." They stepped into the hallway, leaving Willow alone with her gear, with her past, with the person she'd tried so hard to leave behind. She began sorting through the equipment, checking magazines, testing night vision, running through the mental checklist that had kept her alive through 100 missions, but her hands were shaking, just slightly, just enough to notice. Fear, she was afraid. Not of the mission, not of the guards or the compound or the 40 hostiles between her and Jake. She was afraid of what would happen after, when the adrenaline faded, when the target was extracted, when she had to look in the mirror and face what she'd become again. A killer, a ghost, a weapon in human form. Outside the window, the training yard continued its normal routine. Rangers qualifying, instructors shouting, technicians maintaining equipment. The world she'd inhabited for 3 years, the peaceful world, the normal world, the world she was about to leave behind. A knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. "Come in." Master Sergeant Grant entered, his weathered face serious. He closed the door behind him and stood there for a moment, just looking at her, really looking at her, seeing past the uniform and the oil stains and the carefully maintained facade. "I served with a SEAL in Afghanistan," he said quietly. "Back in 2016, we were in a situation, bad situation, pinned down, taking fire from 3 sides. No air support, no QRF. We thought we were done." He paused. Then this operator appeared out of nowhere, moved through that kill zone like it was a Sunday stroll, took out 12 Taliban fighters in under 2 minutes, pulled us out. Never even got her name, just saw her patch as she disappeared. Black background, red phoenix. Willow said nothing. "That was you, wasn't it?" She met his eyes. "That operation is classified." "That's a yes." Grant moved closer. "You saved my life that day, saved 6 of us. We submitted a commendation, but it got buried. Black Ops, they told us, can't acknowledge it, can't even confirm it happened." He held out his hand. "I never got to say thank you." Willow looked at his hand, at the sincerity in his eyes, at this man who'd recognized her not from her shooting or her stance but from a moment years ago when she'd been Phoenix without hesitation, without fear, without doubt. She shook his hand. "You're welcome. Kick their ass, Senior Chief." Grant's grip was firm. "And bring your man home." He left, the door closed, and Willow was alone again, but something had shifted inside her. The fear was still there, the doubt, the weight of all the things she'd done and would do again, but alongside it was something else, something she'd forgotten during her 3 years of hiding. Purpose. She finished gearing up, strapped on the weapons, secured the magazines, became Phoenix one more time. When Shepard returned, she found Willow standing by the window, fully kitted out, ready to deploy. "How do you feel?" Shepard asked. Willow thought about that question, really thought about it. How did she feel? Scared, determined, angry, hopeful, broken, whole, all of it at once, all of it warring inside her chest like competing storms. "I feel ready," she said finally. "Good." Shepard checked her watch. "Your flight leaves in 40 minutes, but first there's something you need to do." "What?" "Say goodbye to the people out there who only knew you as Willow. They deserve that much." Willow looked out at the training yard, at Derek Kane still strutting around like he owned the place, at Fern Delgado probably wondering what was happening, at all the soldiers who dismissed her, mocked her, ignored her. Did they deserve a goodbye? Did they deserve to know the truth? Maybe not all of them, but some of them did. "Give me 15 minutes, Willow said. She walked out of the command building and onto the range. The crowd that had gathered earlier had dispersed, but Derek was still there, holding court with his rangers, telling war stories that probably weren't entirely true. He saw her approaching and laughed. "Look who's back, come to apologize for showing off earlier." Willow stopped a few feet from him, close enough to talk, far enough to maintain tactical awareness, old habits. "No apology, just came to tell you something." "Oh yeah, what's that?" She looked him in the eye, this man who'd slapped her, humiliated her, tried to break her, this man who had no idea what real strength looked like. "You were right about one thing, I don't belong here, not anymore." She paused. "But it's not because I'm weak, it's because I'm done pretending to be." Derek's smile faltered. "What's that supposed to mean?" But Willow had already turned away, walking toward Fern, who stood by the supply depot, watching with curious eyes. "You asked me where I served," Willow said when she reached her. "Yeah. Places you've never heard of, doing things I can't talk about for people who don't exist." She pulled out her old patch and pressed it into Fern's hand. "Keep this. Maybe someday it'll be declassified, maybe someday you'll understand." Fern looked at the patch, at the phoenix rising from ashes, at the symbol of something she couldn't quite comprehend. "Are you leaving?" For a while, maybe longer. Willow managed a small smile. Thanks for being kind, not everyone was. She didn't wait for a response, just walked back toward the command building where a vehicle was waiting to take her to the airfield, where Ghost and Wraith were waiting, where Jake was waiting, chained in a cell, hoping someone would come. Phoenix was rising, and this time she wasn't going back down. What does it cost to save a life? The desert was cold at night, colder than most people realized. The kind of cold that seeped into your bones and stayed there, whispering that you didn't belong in this place, that you should leave while you still could. Willow Bennett lay prone on a sand dune, night vision goggles revealing the compound 1,000 meters to the south. Beside her, two figures moved with the same practiced silence. Ghost, Wraith, her old team, the people who'd seen her at her worst and her best and never flinched. "Target confirmed," Ghost whispered, his voice crackling through the encrypted radio. "Second floor, north wing, single heat signature, has to be Sparrow." "Guard rotation?" Willow asked. "Like clockwork, every 6 hours. Next shift change in 40 minutes. "That's our window." She studied the compound through her scope, guard towers at each corner, spotlights sweeping the perimeter in predictable patterns, 40 hostiles, maybe more. The kind of odds that would make any reasonable person turn around and call for backup. But Phoenix had never been reasonable, and backup wasn't coming. "Execute on my mark," she said. They moved, 3 shadows sliding down the dune like water seeking the lowest ground. No lights, no sound, just the steady rhythm of boots on sand and the slow countdown of a mission clock that allowed for no delays. The approach took 2 hours, slow, methodical, every step calculated, every breath controlled. This wasn't the Hollywood version of combat. This was the real thing, the kind that required patience more than courage, the kind that killed you if you rushed. Willow's mind was clear, focused. All the doubts and fears from earlier had evaporated the moment she'd put on her gear. This was what she'd been trained for. This was what she was good at. Not cleaning rifles or changing oil, not pretending to be normal, but this. Moving through hostile territory like a ghost, saving lives, ending threats. Being Phoenix. They reached the compound's outer perimeter at 0300, exactly on schedule. The guards were tired, 6 hours into their shift. Eyes heavy, attention wandering, basic mistakes, fatal mistakes. "Confirm target," Ghost whispered. Willow raised her binoculars, scanned the buildings until she found what she was looking for. A window on the 2nd floor of the main structure. And behind the glass, barely visible in the dim light, a figure sitting motionless. Sparrow confirmed. Her voice was steady, but her heart was pounding. Jake, alive, after 3 weeks of captivity, after torture and isolation and whatever else they'd done to him, still alive. "Execute on my mark." The guards rotated exactly as the intelligence had predicted. For 90 precious seconds, the north wall was unwatched. "Go." They moved. The wall was over in 3 seconds, each operative boosting the next with practiced efficiency. Inside the compound, they split according to the plan. Ghost and Wraith peeling off to handle the guard posts while Willow made for the main building. She reached the door, picked the lock in 4 seconds, slipped inside. The hallway was dark, silent, smelling of dust and neglect. She moved through it like a ghost, clearing corners, checking doors, ascending the stairs to the 2nd floor. The room was at the end of the hall, a simple wooden door with a heavy padlock. Willow pulled out her picks and went to work. The lock clicked open. She pushed the door inward. And there he was. Jake Morrison, Sparrow, 3 years older, 30 pounds lighter. Eyes that had seen too much darkness, survived too much pain, but alive, breathing, real. "Phoenix," his voice was a ragged whisper, "I knew you'd come." She crossed the room in 3 strides and knelt beside him, her hands already working on the chains that bound him to the wall. "We're getting you out of here. The guards are being handled." The first chain fell away. Can you walk? I can try. That's all I ask. The second chain released and Sparrow slumped forward. Willow caught him, supporting his weight with an arm around his waist. Ghost, Wraith, package secured, beginning extraction. Copy clear on our end. Move to exfil point. They made it down the stairs, through the hallway, out the door. The compound was quiet, the guards neutralized, the way clear. Almost too easy. Willow felt the hairs on the back of her neck rise. Something was wrong. Move faster, she increased their pace. Something doesn't feel right. They were halfway to the wall when the lights came on. Spotlights blazed to life, turning night into day. Sirens wailed, and from every building, armed men poured into the compound. Contact, Ghost's voice crackled over the radio. Multiple hostiles, all directions. It was a trap. Willow's mind raced through options, calculating angles, assessing threats. They were outnumbered, outgunned, caught in the open with a wounded man. The kind of situation that turned into body bags and black site funerals and names added to walls that the public never saw. The easy days are over indeed, she muttered. Wraith, cover fire. Ghost, get to the extraction point and call in the bird. She pulled Sparrow toward the nearest cover. I'll hold them here. Phoenix, no. Jake's voice was weak but urgent. That's an order. She pushed him toward Ghost. Get him out, whatever it takes. Their eyes met, and in that moment a lifetime of unspoken words passed between them. All the missions, all the close calls, all the moments when they'd trusted each other with their lives. Don't die, Sparrow whispered. Not planning on it. She turned toward the advancing enemy, raised her weapon, and became the warrior she had always been. Phoenix, rising from the ashes one more time. The firefight lasted 7 minutes. 7 minutes of controlled bursts and tactical retreats, of drawing fire away from her team and buying them time to reach the wall. 7 minutes of being exactly who she was trained to be. The world narrowed to simple calculations. Threat assessment, target acquisition, firing solution, reload, move, repeat. No fear, no hesitation, just training and instinct and the cold mathematics of combat. She was hit twice, grazing wounds, nothing serious. Pain was just information, something to be noted and filed away, addressed later, if there was a later. When the helicopter finally appeared over the compound, raining suppressive fire from its mounted guns, Willow was down to her last magazine. Her shoulder burned, her leg ached. Blood seeped from a dozen minor wounds, but she was still moving, still fighting, still breathing. Phoenix, move, Ghost's voice screamed over the radio. She ran. Bullets stitched the ground behind her. Something burned across her shoulder. A graze, nothing serious. She reached the wall, vaulted over, and sprinted toward the hovering aircraft. Hands reached down to pull her aboard. The helicopter banked hard, climbing into the night sky as the compound erupted in chaos below. Willow collapsed against the bulkhead, breathing hard, blood seeping from wounds she hadn't had time to notice, but she was alive. And beside her, strapped into a seat with Ghost monitoring his vitals, Sparrow was alive too. You're insane, Sparrow's voice was weak but tinged with wonder. You know that, right? Willow laughed, the sound surprising even herself. Welcome back, Sparrow. Welcome back yourself, Phoenix. He reached out and she took his hand, feeling the warmth of life in his grip, the pulse that proved they'd both made it, that against all odds they'd survived. As the helicopter carried them toward safety, toward home, Willow allowed herself to feel something she'd denied for 3 years. Peace. Not the artificial peace of hiding, not the false calm of pretending to be someone else, but real peace. The kind that comes from doing what you were meant to do, from saving someone worth saving, from being exactly who you are without apology or shame. The past was behind her. The future was uncertain. But in this moment, flying through the darkness with the man she'd thought lost forever, she was exactly where she was meant to be. A warrior, a protector, a friend. The easy days were over, but the easy days had never been the point. How do you come back from becoming a ghost? Dawn was breaking over Fort Liberty when the helicopter touched down. Medics rushed to take Sparrow, their urgent voices fading as they wheeled him toward the hospital. Willow watched him go, exhaustion finally catching up with her. She had burns on her arms, a gash on her shoulder, bruises covering half her body, but she was smiling. Colonel Hayes met her on the tarmac, his face a mixture of relief and something deeper, something like pride. "Welcome home, Senior Chief." "Good to be home, sir. The doctors say Morrison will make a full recovery, thanks to you." Willow shook her head. "Thanks to all of us, I just finished what the team started." Hayes studied her for a long moment, the kind of look that said he was seeing her clearly for the first time, not as a technician, not as a problem, but as what she really was. "The instructor position is still available, whenever you're ready." She looked across the base, at the training yards where everything had changed, at the buildings full of soldiers who had watched her secret reveal, at the sky brightening with the promise of a new day. "I think I'm ready now." Hayes smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. "Then let's get started." But first, there was unfinished business. Derek Kane stood in the training yard, surrounded by his rangers, his swagger diminished but not entirely gone. He looked up when Willow approached, his expression uncertain, calculating, trying to understand what had happened, trying to reconcile the cleaning lady he'd slapped with the operator who just returned from a Black Ops mission. The crowd parted as she walked toward him, soldiers who'd mocked her, ignored her, dismissed her, now watching with something that looked like respect, or maybe fear. Sometimes the two were hard to distinguish. "Sergeant Kane," Willow said. He straightened, almost involuntarily. "Ma'am." She stopped a few feet from him, close enough to talk, far enough to maintain the professional distance that her new rank demanded. "You were right about one thing. I'm not just a technician. Never was." Derek said nothing. What could he say? His entire worldview had been shattered in the span of 24 hours. "But you were wrong about something else." She looked him in the eye. "Strength isn't about how loud you can yell, how hard you can hit, how much you can intimidate. Real strength is quiet. It's controlled. It's knowing when to fight and when to walk away." She held up the M4 that had started everything, the one with the defective firing pin. "This weapon would have failed you in Syria, would have gotten your men killed. I tried to tell you that, but you weren't listening, too busy proving you were in charge." Derek's face reddened. I'm not looking for an apology," Willow cut him off. "I'm giving you information. Use it, learn from it, or don't. That's your choice." She handed him the rifle. "But if you ever hit another soldier under my watch for any reason, you'll find out exactly how quiet real strength can be." She didn't wait for his response, just walked away, toward the command building where Shepard was waiting, where her new life was beginning, where Phoenix would finally stop hiding and start teaching others what it meant to be a warrior. Fern Delgado was waiting by the supply depot, her eyes red, like she'd been crying. She held out the Phoenix patch Willow had given her. "You should keep this." "No," Willow closed Fern's fingers around it. "It's yours now. A reminder that people aren't always what they seem, that the quiet ones, the overlooked ones, sometimes they're the strongest of all." "Will you come back as an instructor?" "Count on it." They embraced, two women who'd seen different sides of the same war, who understood that survival took many forms, that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was keep going when everything inside you wanted to stop. Inside the command building, Shepard was packing up her laptop, getting ready to disappear again, to return to whatever shadow organization she represented, whatever black budget-funded operations that didn't exist. "How does it feel?" she asked when Willow entered. Strange, good, terrifying. Willow sat down. I spent 3 years trying to be someone else, someone normal, someone who didn't carry the weight of classified operations and kill counts. But it was all a lie. I'm not normal, never will be. Is that a bad thing? Willow thought about that question, really thought about it. Was it bad to be different, to be designed for war when everyone else was designed for peace, to carry scars that would never fully heal? No, she said finally. It's not bad, it's just who I am. Shepard smiled. Good, because I'm going to need Phoenix again. Not now, maybe not for years, but someday, when the next impossible mission comes along, when we need someone who can do what no one else can do. And until then, Shepard stood. You teach, you train, you turn good soldiers into great ones. You pass on everything you've learned, everything you've survived. You make sure the next generation is ready for whatever comes. She paused at the door, and maybe, just maybe, you finally let yourself be happy. She left, the door closed, and Willow was alone again. But this time the solitude felt different, not lonely, not heavy, just quiet. The good kind of quiet that comes from knowing who you are and being okay with it. She walked to the window, looked out at the training yard, at Derek Kane standing there with the defective rifle, finally understanding what he'd missed, at Fern clutching the Phoenix patch, at the other soldiers going about their day, training, learning, preparing for wars they might never fight, or wars they'd fight tomorrow. This was her purpose now, not eliminating threats in foreign deserts, not running black ops that would never be acknowledged, but this, teaching, guiding, making sure the next generation knew the difference between strength and cruelty, between confidence and arrogance, between being a warrior and being a weapon. 3 months later, Senior Chief Willow Bennett stood in front of her first class as a SEAL instructor. 30 faces looked back at her, young, eager, scared, exactly like she'd been once, before the missions, before Phoenix, before she learned what it cost to be the best. My name is Senior Chief Bennett, she began, and I'm here to teach you how to survive, not just in combat, but after combat, when the mission is over and the adrenaline fades and you're left with the choices you made. She pulled out a rifle, the same M4 with the defective firing pin, now repaired, now perfect. This weapon failed inspection 3 months ago. The inspector who caught it was mocked, dismissed, hit, but she was right, and because she was right, because she stood her ground, 30 Rangers deployed to Syria with reliable weapons instead of defective ones. She set the rifle down. That inspector was me, and that story is important because it teaches you something vital. Strength isn't always about pulling a trigger. Sometimes it's about refusing to pull it, about standing your ground, about protecting people even when they don't know they need protecting. The class was silent, listening, actually listening. You're here to become the best, Willow continued. The elite, the ones who get called when everything else has failed. But being elite isn't just about shooting straight or running fast. It's about judgment, about knowing when to fight and when to walk away, about carrying the weight of impossible choices and still being able to live with yourself afterward. She looked at each face, each future warrior, each person who would someday carry their own scars and ghosts and midnight regrets. I can teach you tactics. I can teach you weapons. I can teach you how to move through hostile territory like a ghost and eliminate threats before they know you're there. But I can't teach you the most important thing. That's something you have to learn on your own. What's that? Someone asked. Willow smiled. That you're human, no matter how good you get, no matter how many missions you complete, no matter how much the world needs you to be a weapon, you're still human, and being human is okay. She picked up the rifle again. Questions? A hand went up. A young woman in the back, barely 20, reminded Willow of herself at that age, before everything changed. Is it true you ran a solo rescue mission in Syria? Can't confirm or deny classified operations. But hypothetically, If someone did run a solo rescue mission, how would they prepare for something like that? Willow thought about Jake, chained in that room, about Ghost and Wraith, about the 7 minutes of firefight that had felt like 7 hours, about the choice to stand and fight when running would have been smarter. Hypothetically, she met the young woman's eyes. They'd prepare by knowing their why, not the mission objective, not the tactical goal, but why they personally need to do it. Because when everything goes wrong, when you're outnumbered and outgunned and bleeding and the smart move is to retreat, that why is what keeps you moving forward. She set the rifle down one final time, and they'd prepare by accepting that survival isn't guaranteed, that sometimes the mission costs more than you plan to pay, but that some people are worth that cost, some causes are worth fighting for, and some battles you can't walk away from even when you should. The class absorbed that, processing, understanding, beginning to grasp what it really meant to wear the uniform, to take the oath, to become the tip of the spear. All right, Willow checked her watch. Let's get started. Today we're covering advanced tactical movement. Tomorrow, close quarters combat. Friday, we run a simulation. You'll fail hard, but you'll learn, she smiled. Questions? No hands went up. Good, let's move. They filed out, heading to the training course, young warriors ready to be forged, ready to learn, ready to become something more than they'd been when they walked in. Willow watched them go, feeling something she hadn't felt in years, something that had been missing during her time as a technician, during her years running Black Ops, during all the missions and deployments and sleepless nights. Hope that the next generation would be better, smarter, stronger. Hope that they'd learn from her mistakes, that they'd avoid her regrets, that they'd find the balance between being a warrior and being human that had taken her so long to discover. She followed them out into the morning sun, into the training yard where it had all started, where Derek Kane had slapped her, where she'd revealed who she really was, where Phoenix had risen from 3 years of ashes. And as she watched her students begin their training, as she saw them struggle and fail and try again, Willow Bennett finally understood something important. She'd spent 3 years trying to kill Phoenix, trying to bury the operator, trying to be normal, but Phoenix had never died. She'd just been waiting, resting, healing, getting ready for the next mission, the next fight, the next impossible task. And that next mission wasn't in some desert fortress, wasn't in enemy territory, wasn't against terrorists or warlords or threats to national security. It was here, training the next generation, passing on the lessons, making sure that the warriors who came after her would be better, wiser, more human. That was Phoenix's real purpose. Not destruction, but creation, not taking lives, but shaping them, not burning in isolation, but rising, again and again, every time the world needed her. Far away, in an office that didn't exist, in a building that appeared on no maps, Shepard watched a satellite feed of Fort Liberty. She saw Willow walking with her students, saw the purpose in her stride, the peace in her bearing. She performed exceptionally, her aide noted. She always does. Shepard closed the feed. Begin preparations for Phase 2, the other candidates. They're ready when she is. Shepard turned from the screen, her eyes fixed on something only she could see. The world is changing. We need warriors who understand that strength isn't about destruction. It's about protection. It's about knowing when to fight and when to teach, when to be a weapon and when to be a shield. She paused, smiled, the expression holding secrets that would never be told. And Phoenix, Shepard's smile widened. Phoenix is just the beginning. The feed went dark. The story continued. And somewhere in Fort Liberty, a woman who had been invisible for 3 years began the work of creating warriors who would change everything. One soldier at a time, one lesson at a time, one day at a time. The easy days were over. The real work had just begun. But Willow Bennett, Phoenix, senior chief, operator, teacher, friend, she was finally ready for it. Because sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. And sometimes the strongest warriors are the ones who learn to be human first.